Haya Haini, the Oirech Yumaini, Ibu Nege, I'm a Lolo. I'm Hayain, the Oirech Yumaini, Boo Nege, I'm a Lolo, Boo Nege, I'm a Lolo.
I'm Hayain, the Oirech Yumaini, Boo Nege, I'm a Lolo. I'm Hayain, the Oirech Yumaini, Boo Nege, I'm a Lolo.
Hello everyone, this is the fourth in the series of Laining, and today what I'd like to deal with is extremely relevant to the situation we're in, where there's a gap between Israel and the diaspora. Laining. Either it's a personal obligation, albeit we have to do it in a minyan, or it's a communal obligation. If there isn't a minyan, then there's no obligation upon me, or you have a personal obligation to ensure that the community lanes. Once they do, you're off the hook. Well, now we come down to the following question. Majority of the minyan that actually didn't hear the laning of the week before because they were in the diaspora and they missed the Parsha. Can they make it up with just 6-7 people that didn't hear it and 3 others that did? Chaye Adam, Rav Avram Danzig, who was a grocer in Vilna and wrote a beautiful halachic work, says Tzarichiyun, Im kulam shamu kriyas haTorah v'yesh eze b'nei adam shelo sham'u, hayim mutar likrot od pam b'shvilam. If indeed you don't have a minyan of people that didn't hear Laining, you only have a few people, can you read for them? If it's a personal obligation, then obviously yes. As Rab Baruch Ber pointed out in his Birkas Mashmuel, Im nomar da'achiyuv chaya filu al echad, and the dinus teino ne'emar ela ba'asara, shayach adin derubo kechulo, da're'ika rov chiyuv, u'miyut tur, v'dinu b'chol ha'torah kula, da'rinon rubo kechulo. If you say you have a majority of people that didn't hear Laining, 6 people out of 10, then you can take out a Sefer Torah, get 4 people that will be good sports, and they'll hear the Parsha say of Bahalotcha again. However, that's only if you assume it's a personal obligation. If you say you just have to ensure that there's a Laining in the city, where there was, both outside of Israel and in Israel, there's no reason to make it up. But if you say it's a communal obligation, then we got a problem because maybe you need 10. It's not. And on this level, there's a big machloket how to read a Ran. The Ran says explicitly in the name of the Ramban, that same Ramban that says it's a communal obligation. Laining is part of the communal obligation, it's not a personal one. You only do it if you have 10, or you have a majority of 10, like in Kaddish and Baruch Hu. How do you read this Ran? Comes along the Chafetz Chaim in his Bir Halacha and says, Pashut. Majority is good enough. Namely, Hirani Gadol Echad Shemufurash Baran, the Ruban, Shelo Karu, Sagi. If you have a majority, good enough, and you can lane with the majority. So 6 people from Chutz La'aretz came to Israel. They want to make up a Parsha. 4 already heard it. Not a problem. Indeed, Rav Moshe Feinstein, on the heels of the Chafetz Chaim, says, Mikom makom sagi beruban chayavin mitam haran b'shem haramban shenakatzu gam al kriyas haTorah. ויהיה נכון להחמיר כשיש רבים פטורים יותר מה6 וה7 החייבים שיפרשו מהם רק 3 ו4 להתחבר להם בשביל טעם הבט. Says the Rikos Moshe that we read it pashut, good enough to have a majority. So if there's too many Israelis in the room, tell them to leave. So you're left with a majority of Bnei Chutz La'aretz that need to read, a minority of Bnei Eretz Yisrael. All in all, it's fine. But, as I said, the Chaye Adam says, I have a suffix. Because when it comes to Shema, Baruch Hu, and even if one person didn't hear it, he can go ahead and say it out loud, and the minyan will answer Baruch Hashem Baruch L'Olam Va'ed, or Kedusha, or Kaddish, whatever it might be. But, he says, regarding Kriyat HaTorah, יש לומר דלא תקנו את שכל הציבור חייבים בקריאה, אבל לא בשביל יחיד, וצריך עיון. He says, I'm not sure, maybe for Kriyas HaTorah, it's such a communal obligation, you actually need 10. And that's exactly what the Chasam Sofer says in the Tshuva. Lo shayach ruba v'kechulo, ela mitoch kulo. You can only say a majority if you have everyone obligated in the same thing. Avalim lo nitvadu rak rov Sanhedrin ino klum. Namely, the majorities learned from the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was a group of rabbis. They were all sitting in the same room, and majority rules whatever they rule. That's only if they're sitting in the same room. Avalim lo nitvadu rak rov Sanhedrin ino klum. If they're not sitting in the same room, no. Hachanami lolam shediran amiyut batar rov v'lo kolam b'fanenu k'gon asara have eida ledavar b'kshusha ve'im shiva me'em lo shamu kadishu baruch hu nimshach amiyut achar rov. Avalim rak nitvadu shiva lo armin davar shebikdusha. Says the Chasam Sofer that this communal obligation can only take effect if 10 people are in the room, they're all obligated, then maybe 1 or 2 or 3 left, you still have a majority. But if you don't have 10 lechatchila, you only have 7 or 6, it doesn't take effect. And that's exactly what the Imre Chaim, who I never heard of, is quoted as saying in the name of Reb Chaim in a book called Ma'atikei Shmu'ah about all these things from the Brisker world. And he says Reb Chaim read this Ran differently. How did he read the Ran? He read the Ran as follows, that the Ran is talking about 2 different things. Is talking about Kriyas Torah. But when it comes to Rubam Mechuyavim Badavar, he gave 2 examples, Kaddish Ubaruch Hu. Namely, since the Ran didn't write punctuation, what you're supposed to do is read it like this. That's Kriyas Torah, period. Next case, Rubam, if you have a majority, like for Kaddish and Baruch Hu, it's good enough. And therefore he was machmir that if you want to make up Laining, you must have 10 people that didn't hear the Laining. And that is what Rav Moshe Feinstein also surmises, that because it's a communal obligation, maybe you need all 10. And indeed, even though the Bir Halacha paskin otherwise, he says the Efshar, and when Rav Baruch Ber brings this, he indeed says that if indeed you need a community to obligate you in the Laining, then Loshna Hadin the Rubal Kechula, you can't say majority will rule. And that's exactly the way the Aruch HaShulchan paskins, B'Kriyas HaTorah Nirali Barur the Leka Asara Shalosh Amu Kriyas HaTorah and Likrot BaTorah. Only for davening you can have a majority, but not for Laining. And that's the way Rav Soloveitchik ultimately did it. In Divrei HaRav, brought by Rav Schechter, he writes that the times that he went from Boston to New York on a Monday and he missed Laining, he would ask the students, and I quote, he was machmir that maybe it's a communal obligation, and therefore you need 10 people that didn't hear Laining on a Monday in order to make it up. It's not good enough to have a majority. So we found a very interesting ramification today, and that is if you have 6, 7 people, a majority of a minyan, that didn't hear the Laining of last week because they were in Chutz La'aretz, they missed the Parsha. The next week, can they make it up by having 6, 7 from Chutz La'aretz and 3 from Israel? If you say it's a personal obligation, why not? You have a minyan in the room. If you say you just have to ensure the community has a Laining, there was a Laining, you just weren't there. But if you say it's a communal obligation, there's 2 ways to go. Either majority is okay, or perhaps no. For Laining, you need to have a community of people, 10 that didn't hear it, in order to make it up. And that's the way Rav Soloveitchik was marked.